Oh, hello there, and welcome to Phil Talking D20. So, today's video is a bit of a deep dive on the Barbarian. And the reason I'm doing a deep dive on the Barbarian is because it's cool, and Pathfinder 2 has changed the game. And this is based on personal experience of Barbarians from earlier editions. So looking at D&D 3.5, very specifically as a kind of a notation point of interest in the Barbarian. Back in the days of D&D 3.5, the Barbarian was illiterate by design. You played a Barbarian, your character was classed as illiterate. And I think this is one of the real strengths of Pathfinder 2, that you're not pigeonholed. And I think a lot of people may bypass the Barbarian because they might just go, oh, I'm not planning on playing Conan. And that would be a crying shame, because you can do so much more with Barbarian than just play Conan the Barbarian. You can still play Conan the Barbarian. Yes, this video is about the Barbarian. How many more times can we say? Anyway, moving on. So, that aside, one of the great things that we have to play with in our kind of creative spaces is what our character is about, where they come from, and why they're doing what they're doing, and getting into the world and adventuring. And the classes are your building blocks for that. You can't get away from that. You look at them, you read them, you think, what about this, what about that? You float around ideas. But Barbarian in Pathfinder 2 isn't just your wild living kind of tribal kind of, rage machine stereotype. Let's be brutally clear. The old school editions of D&D, and even to an extent Pathfinder 1, and to a lesser extent 5e, are very much a pigeonhole, okay, massive dumb bruiser. And yeah, you don't have to play, a low intelligence barbarian, but if we look at kind of Critical Role and the way that he wonderfully plays that barbarian. Let's not ever suggest that is a bad character, because absolutely love that character. It is a great example of the barbarian at its best in a traditional kind of stereotype sense. But you can do more with it, and this is kind of what I want to talk about. So I'm going to describe to you a character. He is a devotee of the dwarven god Magrim, the god of the underworld for the dwarves. He is a member of a band of kind of holy warriors that are tasked by the dwarven holds for protecting their crypts and the places where they keep their dead from being overrun by undead, who are profane and a sin in the eyes of Magrim, because Magrim, being the god of the underworld, is all about the transition of life to death and the underworld. And many, generally speaking, good gods and gods involved in life and death find undead abhorrent. They're a kind of a glitch in the matrix, if you like. They're not supposed to be. They're supposed to either be dead or alive. And undead are re-dead, re-alive, some stupid connotation of the two. So this guy, he has trappings of faith, he has a code, he has a group of like-minded warriors that he associates with. They probably work for a church. He has knowledge and skills and the ability to prosecute his job in crypts and underground areas that are typically afflicted by undead very, very well. The reason it's called Dreadguard is because this unit I created for my own world, when the party visited a dwarven hold, it took a bit of a horror turn, mainly because in a dwarven hold underground, there's no daylight to give you respite from vampire bites. And you can imagine if vampires and undead got a foothold in a dwarven hold, there's a lot of repetition of words in this video, it would be terrifying. You wouldn't be in a village with the doors and windows barred praying for, the sun to come up the next morning to give you some kind of, some leeway and some time to maybe try and flee the area if needs be. You don't have that in a dwarven hold. You either beat them in their environment, on their turf, where they are 24/7, not sleeping, not eating, just hunting you, or you all die. So, yeah, you see in Lord of the Rings how terrifying the goblins are, the way they tunnel in and invade and swarm a dwarven hold. Undead are going to do that, and they're probably going to do it better, which filled me with dread when I thought about it. And I was just like, the dwarven god Magrin, Torag's older brother, if you want to get nerdy, nerd, is a really prominent god in that regard. He's Torag's older brother. Torag, obviously the main man. We all know Torag. Anyone who plays a dwarf knows about Torag. So having this older brother character who is directly responsible for the kind of the marshalling of the mortal to the kind of the, if you like, the underworld, the afterlife, he's the guy who's going to step in and try and aid in that. So I've given you this kind of bit of backstory, and if he's got this knowledge and these skills and these specialist abilities that help him fight undead, and he's a member of some kind of holy order and works for a church, you're going to be like, oh, right, got it. Phil is talking about a cleric. Or Phil is talking about a champion. Like, easy. Nailed it. So why is he banging on about these two classes when he's told us he's going to do a video about Barbarian? He's clearly an idiot. Until you realise that the 2e Barbarian is an anti-undead machine. And I'm going to very, very eloquently demonstrate that now by clicking through some screens and showing you some good juicy stuff. So, here you can see we have a selection of bits and bobs in the good old Path Builder 2e app. And I've character named Dreadguard. Worst name ever, because really that's just the unit I'm talking about as opposed to this bloke. We'll call him Bob. He's a barbarian. He's a dwarf. His background was he's a miner. He gets underground terrain expertise as a free skill feat. Look, terrain expertise underground. Instantly, that's giving us these little tweaky advantages in terms of the kind of the meta of the game, and it's not unheard of or unimaginable to have a dwarf who may have done some mining before he took up the call to fight the horrors in the crypts beneath his hold. Now, ability boosts: strength, constitution, wisdom, minus the charisma, wisdom, strength, 18, tanking, con 14. It's not the highest con in the world, don't really care. He's an absolute beast. Wisdom 14, because we've got to have smarts. Intelligence and dex are both 12. We've still got a bit of smarts. We've got a bit of agility. And then we've got a charisma of minus 8, because he's a dwarf that gets possessed by the rage and the fury of his god. And that probably, maybe lends him to being maybe a bit of an extremist, maybe a bit of a fundamentalist. That's kind of irrelevant. I just like the fact that he's got this unnatural gift that we're going to get to. Now, I am about to get a Tolkien joke in. You'll hear it coming. I'm a rock dwarf. Your ancestors lived and worked among the great ancient stones. You gain +2 circumstance bonus to fortitude and reflex DCs against attempts to shove and trip. So thinking about that from a perspective of like wrestling with a vampire in a crypt and it's trying to take me to the ground and drink my blood. I don't want that gives me an advantage. Tying in the story and the meta and thinking these things through. However, what else have we got here? Oh, what's this juicy little one? Sudden charge. We dwarves are very dangerous over short distances, in the words of Gimli. I can basically make 2 moves and an attack. Now, one of the things that dwarves are obviously noted for in pretty much every game they're in is they're not particularly fast on their feet. They're normally one of the slower races. Now, all of a sudden, we've got this barbarian dwarf who has these sudden short bursts of violent explosive speed. And we need that. We need mobility. So, on the subject of mobility, Rock Runner, you're seeing a picture starting to build. Your innate connection to stone makes you adept at moving across uneven surfaces. So basically, we ignore difficult terrain caused by rubble and uneven ground of stone and earth. Where do we typically find those? Dungeons, crypts, places underground, normally infested with horrible, horrifying undead. So now, if we ignore difficult terrain and we have sudden charge, like the vampire goes, "Ha ha ha! I am behind all this rubble, and your friends will move slowly, but I will escape." And you go, "No, I ignore all that, and I get into combat with you, and I'm raging." Ooh, juicy. And then your party, when you've locked him down, can catch up and help you bosh him and stake him and get the job done. Also, flip that around. Someone's in peril, and you need to get to them, and there's difficult terrain in the way. No, there isn't. Nail it. And also, nice little cheeky bonus, you're not flat-footed when balancing on narrow surfaces, again in similar kind of environments. So you're just adept at being an undergroundy, crypty, ruiny fighter. Brilliantly wonderful stuff. Rounding that out, lovely. So we've gone through some really juicy stuff that makes us very skilled and adept at being underground and in crypts and tombs and ruins where undead may linger. However, this is where we get juicy. Spirit instinct. Now, nice little flavor text. Whether you are emotionally sensitive to the spirits around you, the spirits are speaking to me, worship your ancestors or apparitions in general, or are haunted by the spectre of an ancestor, relative, friend, or foe. That I love. That gives you as a player some really cool kind of stuff to kind of engage with for kind of story and character development. This, is it a curse? Is it a gift? I kind of, just my personal take, because there is no right or wrong answer to that question, because it's whatever you want it to be. I went with the idea that he's possessed by his ancestors who have travelled on to the next world and found peace, who are so angry that undead linger and do not take that journey and affront their god, that they fill him and channel like great kind of strength and power into it. Now, anathemas, disrespecting corpses or spirits. However, defending yourself against undead creatures is not. I think we know where this is going. Instinct ability, spirit rage. So instead of it being an additional 2 points of damage, it's actually an additional 3 points of damage. Oh, and it can be positive or negative, and it affects your weapons and your unarmed attacks. So if you come up against a monster that has a weakness to positive, channel positive, baby. Make all your rage damage positive. But wait, not only is that not enough for the spirit instinct, it gets better. Ghost touch property rune, anyone? That's a level 4 rune. So your weapon or unarmed attacks gain the effects of the Ghost Touch property rune, which makes it more effective against incorporeal creatures. It used to be that they had a mischance. Back in olden days, you would be like, oh, right, you're fighting a ghost. It's got a 50-50 mischance on it because it's an incorporeal ghostly creature. And yes, you might hit, but then you might strike it at a moment where it's completely incorporeal because it's not part of this world, and you can just harmlessly pass a blade through it. Now, it's just a flat damage reduction, so it's like, well, I think it might vary in fairness, but when I had a quick look at Ghost, a classic incorporeal monster in Pathfinder 2, half damage against magical weaponry, quarter damage against unmagical attacks. Barbarian, when he's raging, full damage plus extra damage, plus if they have additional weaknesses stacked on for positive, even more damage. Absolute machine. And obviously it then goes up at level 7, but right now I'm focusing on just being an absolutely undead beating beast at level 1, out of the gate. This is where we're at. That puts the Barbar on really, really, really strong terms to be one of the more interesting and certainly more exciting prospects for an undead campaign. There are plenty of settings, the Eye of Dread, where the Knights of Last Wall have literally just been overrun by huge armies of undead because of the rise of the Whispering Tyrant, and Lich, who's undead. Right, that area, that whole region, if you like, that whole play space within the Glorian world is a classic horror, undead roaming kind of, land of terror and peril that this guy is built to tackle head on in a blinding rage of destructive fury. And plenty of people have lots of undead in their campaigns. They're really popular, like a classic, almost like a rite of passage. And you do, certainly pre-Pathfinder 2, often fall foul of the I've got two choices. Well, if you went all the way back to 3.5 when I cut my teeth as a gamer, you had Cleric, classic capability of fighting undead with their spells and their like turning abilities that they get that can heal people or damage undead, etc. Champions or paladins, as they were known back then, with things like Smite Evil. Yes, undead are typically evil. Ranger back in the day had favoured enemy, where you could stack extra damage on against a certain type of foe. I played a ranger who took undead as his first favoured enemy, and by the time he got to like 20 whatever level, he had huge amounts of additional damage that he could just slap on to a dice roll for free because it was undead and he knew how to kill them. That has panned out into where we are now in Pathfinder 2, where we have more choice, more flexibility, more options to create classes that don't fit the standard boring, oh, you're a barbarian, so you probably don't wear many clothes, you probably have a low intelligence, and you probably basically coin a phrase along the lines of Birch Smash as opposed to Hulk Smash. You don't have to be that guy anymore. You saw my stats. He's still a Hulk Smasher when it comes to his strength, but skill training. Great little addition here to Pathfinder 2. I didn't have a huge amount to work with. I'm a barbarian, but I made sure I nailed occultism. Look at that. And religion, because my guy isn't I wear a loincloth and come from backwards culture and, I'm a low intelligence kind of big, strong kind of, barbarian berserker one-trick pony. My guy has a religion. He's got a church that he works for. He has a calling in life to end unlife. And then I've got a bit of society. He's got some survival so he can navigate around in the depth and know what he's talking about. He's got a decent athletics so he can kind of run, jump, and climb trees and fend off a zombie that's trying to, eat him. These kind of things give us these options to create these really dynamic characters that have a lot more going on than just the barbarian pigeonhole that we've seen in previous editions of both Pathfinder and D&D. We've moved on. We've grown up. We've branched out. We can do more. And that's just one example. Yeah, you can build classic, great, wonderfully cool barbarians. If you look at the other instincts, you've got like dragon and animal and fury and giant. Giant's incredible. You can literally incredible Hulk and increase your size and strength and get to the point where you can become like large and then huge and things like that. So there's some brilliantly wonderful, unique paths. But this one really stands out as being something that's not pigeonholed into the stereotype that the class title barbarian pins on itself. So I'm really pleased with that. I really like that kind of opportunity to look outside of the box. It's not far outside of the box. We're not pushing, the bounds of reality too far. But what we've created, very simply, is a very fun, rounded, unique, purpose-driven character who could easily have been played by someone who wanted to play a champion or a paladin, but didn't have the opportunity because that slot got taken by someone at the table. This gives you a unique take on those kind of classes. So if you're sat here right now and you know that you're going into a game as a player that's going to feature a lot of undead, throw him in the mix. But don't tell them you're playing a barbarian. Just talk about all the things he can do. He knows about undead. He's a member of this religious order. He's a holy warrior of Magrim, the god of the underworld for the dwarves, and he takes undead very seriously as a threat to the lands. And he's an expert in fighting in underground tombs and crypts and dungeons. Tell them all that stuff, and then get into combat and rage and kill ghosts like they're nothing. And what's the rest of the party go? Why is he raging? He can't be a barbarian. Trust me, this class is a winner. And it's not just this class, so to speak, it's the Barbarian in general. And if I'm honest with you, a lot of the Pathfinder 2 classes, you can do a lot with them now. Don't let the title of the class put you off having a dabble. Get stuck in, look at all of them, look at Rogue, look at Ranger, and see what different things you can do with them, because you'll be surprised how much you can do. So, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Drop me a like, drop me a subscribe. Stick around for the next one. I've got one coming up on how to create monsters for Pathfinder 2 games really easily, really quickly, grounded in core rules, maintaining balance and focus, but giving you the ability as a games master to reliably create unique monsters for your games and your settings without you homebrewing from scratch and killing your party. Or homebrewing from scratch and having your big kind of encounter fizzle out really quickly and you kind of going, stay tuned for that one. I'm hoping to get that out over the next 4 or 5 days. Stay tuned, stay classy. Drop me a comment below if you've got like a class that you hadn't really thought about before, that you suddenly found something cool and unique out about, like, Ranger or Rogue or whatever. I'd love to hear from you. Stay classy, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.